SUUM Art Talk ahead of tomorrow's opening of Freeze Seoul and Kiev Seoul. And today in this session, we're going to talk about digital art. And I'm the moderator of this panel discussion. I'm Vivienne Chow. I'm the London correspondent of ArtNet News. So digital art has been around since 1960s when artists began to experiment with computers. And fast forward to a few decades on, we're now digital art having a much more heated discussion, obviously, with the appearance of NFTs and crypto and technological advancements, from VR, XR to immersive content, gaming, you name it, is everywhere. But what does it mean to us at this time and this age? And in particularly, how is it affecting us the way we look at art today? So joining us today, we have distinguished speakers who can give us some insights into this topic. So on the far side, we have Amelia Redgrift. So Amelia is a Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at Pace Gallery and Pace Versal. So Amelia leads the global communications and strategy for Pace, which operates 9 gallery locations internationally, including Seoul. And Pace is just expanding this operation here in the South Korean capital. And if you haven't seen it, so I guess this is now a new attraction to go to now. And then we also have Victor Che. So Victor is the Vice President of District, and he's also leading a new crypto project called Arte Meta. So District and through this artistic unit, District, so the team has been exploring the new front of digital art through the state-of-art technologies, which we will see in a bit. So we're going to start with asking some questions. We're going to start with Amelia. I think right now the focus of the discussion around digital art, mainly, of course, NFT, crypto, and maybe in the future immersive content, and it's still so new, and obviously a lot of artists who are still exploring this medium. And at the same time, there are a whole generation of new artists who were not probably coming from the traditional art background, and they're digital native, and they are exploring this new medium in a completely different way. From a gallery's perspective, and Pace has been around for 62 years. Yep. And now we're in a completely new dynamics. So how is the gallery so established, so as like Pace, such an established gallery? How do you guys react to this? And what is the history of Pace dealing with digital art? And what are we expecting from Pace?
Okay, so as you said, Pace has been around over 60 years. We've been established in Boston 62 years ago, and we now have 9 locations worldwide. And Pace has always prided itself on being at the forefront of innovation. And maybe at a certain point that meant showing abstract expressionism, it meant showing early performance art. Now for us, that means showing artists who are engaging with technology within their practice. So as a part of our roster today, we work with multiple artists who work with technology in many different ways. That can be the kind of OG digital artists like James Turrell. It can be Lucas Samaras, who is in his 80s, but kind of even before Photoshop existed, was using Photoshop-like techniques on Polaroids. Or that can mean artists like Leo Villarreal, who built their own custom software to produce their work. So, I mean, for Pace, digital means many things, and it's really just about artists who, instead of a paintbrush, instead of clay, are using technology to make a work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I see it. It feels like digital art, whether it's NFT or something that's being projected on a huge wall. This is like the new canvas, and obviously, as we were talking about earlier, when art school starts to introduce coding in their curriculum, so coding is becoming the new brushstroke, and. But then now, of course, the discussion mainly focuses on NFT and the market, and also the market means trading. So how does and there are so many other different platforms, trading NFTs. But as a gallery, so how does the gallery fit in this ecosystem?
So, I mean, first of all, I'll just give a little bit more background. So I started by talking about how Pace Gallery represents a lot of artists engaging with digital technology. Last year, we launched Pace Verso, which is a hub dedicated to Web3 activity. So that includes an NFT platform that you can access through pacegallery.com. But really, we don't think of it as a platform. We think of it as a hub. It's more of an incubator for NFT projects and Web3 projects that our artists want to make. And that really was born from the fact that we do work with so many artists using technology in their work who naturally had an interest in NFTs when that started to be part of a conversation more widely, and were coming to us and saying, well, how can I make an NFT? So we kind of created Pace Verso to service those artists, and in the past year and a half, we have developed it so much, and it for us was initially we were curious of how to support our artists. Now we have a pretty established team, an all-female team of 5 people who know how to put a team together to support an artist with what they want to bring to fruition. We have partnerships in the space, and we can recommend who artists work with. So that's, just wanted to give a bit of background about how we are looking at kind of how we engage with NFTs as a gallery. But really, it was kind of, you were asking like what place that has in the gallery. For us, it was really about being a means of supporting artists who had that curiosity. So we didn't enter it as it being a market position for Pace. We entered it as being like a tool that we could provide to our artists. And we're learning as we go. It's it's a relatively new field, and it's still in development.
Yes, I think it's also a steep learning curve for those of us coming from the traditional art background. I also experimented with NFTs. I made 2 NFTs, and I sold 1. So I guess that was, I tried to do it just to go through the entire process so that I know, I will have a better idea of what I'm talking about, when I talk about NFTs. But I think it's really important to have, I think Pace is beyond a gallery. Pace is it's almost like an institution, and to have that level of support for artists, I think that is really important for them to continue their creative journey as they go along. So how is it like working with artists who established artists who might not be working with the digital media before, and when they start to explore in this area? So how is it like for them, and any interesting stories that maybe you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, every single artist comes to the NFT space with a different idea. I think the thing is, artists are inherently creative people who maybe take the idea of an NFT and roll it around in their brains, and each person comes up with a different, takes it as a jumping off point that goes in a completely different direction. And we have worked with some artists to create NFTs who are completely digitally native, like John Gerard, Leo Villarreal, very accustomed to coding and a generative artist by nature. But then we have had 2 projects that I would probably call out, which have been very different. One, Glenn Kino. We worked with Glenn Kino on a project called Pass the Baton, which is an NFT project that has built into the smart contract a generative charitable giving element. So every single time one of the NFTs is sold, a portion of the proceeds are donated to social justice causes. So that was an artist who had an idea of how to kind of use the smart contract as a part of a kind of conceptual framework for the project. And then another artist who is, I mean, Glenn also is a digital artist by nature, but maybe someone who's come fairly new would be Jeff Koons. So we were currently working with Jeff Koons on an NFT project called Moon Phases. And again, he is doing something much more creative. He's coming to us with an entire concept for a project, and the NFT is just a single component of that project. So for those who aren't aware of the project, at the end of this year, Jeff is sending 125 sculptures to the moon. And the sculptures will live on the moon in perpetuity. And you can buy one of these sculptures, and you will own that sculpture that is on the moon forever. But your record of owning it will be an NFT. And then the other component to that project is that as well as the moon sculpture that you own, you also will have an earthbound sculpture, which is a kind of stainless steel replica of the moon, which will have the position of where your moon sculpture is marked on the sculpture. And there are so many layers to that project. Each one is also named after a person who has died, who represents a remarkable human achievement. And the entire project is really grounded in this idea about celebrating human achievement. And he's just used the NFT as a jumping off point and as just one part of that.
That is fascinating, to have a sculpture on the moon.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see the launch. Well, not that I'm going to be on the moon, but it will be great to see, finally become true. Is there something else that's coming up like later on this month?
Yep. So at the moment, at our gallery in Seoul, you can preview works by A.A. Murakami, the Japanese-British art collective, who are working on a project called Floating World. And that's Pace Verso in collaboration with Art Blocks, a generative art platform. And that drops on September 14th. And I encourage everybody to come by and see the project in person.
That's really amazing to hear a lot of these super interesting projects in the pipeline. And it also feels like they are kind of also reinventing the idea of NFTs. I think obviously it's still an evolving, you can call it like a media or like a medium or whatever it's called. It's still evolving. And the example that you just mentioned about Jeff Koons, I think it's great. It's a great example. Because a lot of people, when NFTs I think first came about, people just said, oh, it's just why are you spending so much money on a JPEG file? But apparently it has a lot more meaning, or it can have a lot more meaning. It depends on how you approach it and how you use it. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see, how artists approach this new media. Another question that I have is about collecting. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, despite the recent crypto crash and everything, I think still there are a lot of people who are interested in collecting digital art, and obviously the existence of NFTs just make it more somehow more accessible to collect. But how is it like, for a gallery, like the collectors you work with, how do they get into the digital art field, and how is the education process for them in terms of going from traditional art to NFTs?
Well, that's interesting. I'd actually separate that probably into two camps, and I'd talk first about collectors who buy from our digital program at large. And I would say there's a lot of crossover between kind of traditional art forms and digital art within our program, because part of our work as a gallery is to contextualize those digital artists with everything that came before them and to show their place in art history and the importance of their work through all the same tools as we use to kind of build the reputations for kind of traditional artists. It's all one and the same. So I feel like that for collectors, it's very easy to kind of bridge digital and traditional art forms, and we see people, like I say, just collecting across the program. NFTs are slightly different, and like we were saying, it's a relatively new space. The community, the crypto community, has been, up until now, pretty separate to the art world community. And one thing we are trying to do through Verso is kind of create channels that move in both directions and cross-pollinate those audiences. So with the NFT projects we do, we find in real opportunities to show them in real life, like we have with A.A. Murakami in the Seoul Gallery this week. We have taken NFTs to art fairs so that we're speaking to art world audiences about NFTs, and I think it helps kind of break down the barriers for people that view NFTs as something quite separate to traditional art. And then on the other side, we've done a lot of work building a crypto audience and an audience for our NFT projects, but then also making that community feel welcome to come into the gallery, creating opportunities for the community to come into the gallery space and to experience our other exhibitions. We host a lot of events that are kind of promoted only through our Discord channel, or we do a lot of programming that seeks to kind of educate the NFT community about the rest of our program. So for now, I mean, in this nascent stage, I'd say those two collector groups are quite separate, but it's something we're really interested in and exploring how we can bridge that.
But I see that there have been more very young collectors from the crypto generation. They are starting to buy, to collect art, like the physical object, by acquiring like top lots at auctions. Do you see that trend coming?
I hope so. I mean, I think a lot of it is actually about accessibility. I think the Web3 community by nature is about openness and democracy and expansion and collaboration. And I think maybe historically the art world has been the opposite and has kind of prided itself on a level of exclusivity. And so I hope that as we kind of break down those boundaries and are actively inviting new communities into the gallery setting, that the idea of traditional art being something inaccessible and scary and beyond somebody's comfort level will also kind of disintegrate. And that is maybe when we'll start to see what you're talking about. Yeah.
Just one more question that I'm really curious of. So you lead the communications.
Yep.
How has it been like for you now, working with, doing all these like digital art and then NFTs, and apparently they have different communications channel, like you mentioned Discord.
Yeah.
How's your workload like?
It's varied. And it's interesting. But I mean, that's a job of a communications professional, is to develop audiences. And it's been such an interesting journey to discover that there are all these communities and how to talk to new communities about art. And something that I found particularly funny from my perspective is that the traditional art world language, art speak, has sort of been adopted by the Web3 community so now people will talk about blue chip NFT artists. And that's kind of just a very interesting thing for me. If you think NFT artists that are now blue chip have maybe been making work a couple of years. But yeah, it's an interesting journey.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amelia. It's great to get a perspective from you as a communication specialist, and also from the gallery. So moving on, I would like to ask Victor some questions about the work that you guys do. And obviously you guys are very famous, and I'm sure people are familiar with the amazing visuals that you guys have been putting out. But I think maybe to give our audience a bit of a background, can you explain to us the relationship between district, art district, and the differences, and where do you, when you create a work, like what are the inspirations, like the waterfall and a lot of like scenery from nature, and how is it like, for you guys when you create a work?
Yeah, so Astrict is actually originated from a company called District, which is known for creating immersive digital media artwork across the spaces, not just interior, but also externally displayed. Yeah, and we as a digital design company, as District, usually deals with B2B kind of inquiries where a company or an institution comes to us and asks to make a custom tailor-made content and etc. Whereas with Astrict, we deal with the concept of Astrict is actually born from the idea that because we have such amazing creative in-house creators who has the urge to have a creative outlet, the Astrict is coming from that kind of urge, the urge for creativity. And when we have a showing in the galleries space or a museum, then we usually go by the name of Astrict. So there is a slight difference there, but yeah, I think it's also helpful to showcase some of our works that we prepared as a video.
Excellent.
too.
Can we have a look?
I think the file was maybe a little too big. Yeah, but usually it's very smooth. Run through. It's not like.
Yeah, I was thinking, maybe perhaps the
No,
resolution was like super high.
The lagging and the glitch is not the aesthetic that we're going for.
Maybe we can replay it if that can be adjusted afterwards.
It's also available on YouTube under District's account.
I've seen some of the
Yeah.
videos, and it's really impressive. And because like, for example, when like the whale and those display, I always wonder, is it really like that? If I'm standing in the street looking up the building, it's really fascinating, how this is produced, and it's such high quality. So Victor, so you're one of the founders of District. So when you first started, is this what you were thinking? Was this on your mind when you started the studio?
사실 이게 회사 저희 디스트릭트라는 회사가 시작되었을 때는 어떤 미디어 아트라는 거, 디지털 아트라는 거에 대한 지향을 명확하게 갖고 있지는 않았습니다. 시작했을 때는 우리가 새로운 어떤 미디어 기술이라는 것들을 충분히 활용을 해서 인간들에게, 사람들에게 혁신적인 새로운 공간 기반의 경험을 만들겠다라는 그런 목표를 크게 가지고 있었고요. 그러한 목표를 가지고 계속해서 어떤 작품, 아트웍이나 컨텐츠들을 만드는 과정에서 뭐 엔터테인먼트 분야의 컨텐츠를 만들어 보기도 했었고요. 또 게임과 같은, 그리고 뭐 전시와 비슷한 또는 인터랙티브한 어떤 형태의 컨텐츠들을 만들기도 했었는데 그런 과정을 통해서 최근 한 5, 6년 사이에 우리의 고민들이 어떤 디지털 아트라는 형태로 사람들에게 새로운 예술 경험으로 다가갈 수 있을 것 같다라는 그런 고민이 최근 5년 사이에 시작이 되었고요. 그 고민의 결과로 지금 보시는 것과 같은 그런 작품이나 공간들이 만들어졌다고 할 수 있습니다.
Yeah, so District has been in the industry for more than 2 decades, but it didn't really start out as a company that focused on digital art. It actually started as a web agency, and then a lot of media technologies that Victor has been curious about and developing as the company develops is really a tool for them to create a new way to approach the experience of art to the wider audience. So through the past decades, we've done projects with game industry and the ones with the entertainment industry where that's in the form of a game or an exhibition. A lot of them incorporated the new type of technologies that were available at the time. And in the last 5 to 6 years, Victor and the founders and the members of the district actually started thinking about how to bring in an experience that can be enhanced and emphasized by all these amazing digital tools, and that's why the company sort of naturally transitioned into this company that creates this immersive and expensively spatial art experiences and content.
So what we see now, it seems to be quite really ahead compared to the times when the studio first started, and now it has reached a stage where I think, as we can see, the level of technology is really at a state of art level, so beautiful, but then this as a medium, how do you think that this is affecting or influencing the way people look at art? How has it changed? I mean, for example, for you, has it changed the way you think about art? And how is it changing the way the audience thinks about art through looking at your work?
사실 저희가 다루고 있는 어떤 디지털 아트에 사용되고 있는 미디어 기술들은 저는 딱 두 가지 어떤 큰 어떤 변화를 예술 시장에 던져주고 있다라고 생각을 합니다. 하나는 공간의 확장이라는 것이고요. 두 번째는 시간의 확장이라는 것인데 사실 우리가 어떤 디지털 미디어 기술을 통해서 그 나오는 새로운 예술들이 갖고 있는 가장 큰 가능성은 우리가 예술을 접할 수 있는 접점 자체를 현실 세계뿐만 아니라 AR과 같은 증강현실의 세계, 가상의 세계, 여기까지 이렇게 확장을 해내고 있다는 점에서 굉장히 많은 아이디어와 실험들이 나올 수 있을 거라고 저는 생각을 하고요. 두 번째, 시간의 확장의 측면에서도 디지털 미디어가 갖고 있는 끊임없이 변화한다라는 속성, 이거 자체가 어떤 시간이 지나면서 작가와 사용자로 그 대표되는 어떤 예술의 주체들이 작품에 참여함으로써 작품에 영향을 미치는 상호 간의 그 영향관계를 만들어내는 형태로 작품 자체를 끊임없이 진화하게 만드는 그런 결과를 낳을 거라고 생각을 하고요. 거기에서부터 우리가 디지털 미디어가 만드는 또는 NFT, 메타버스와 같은 기술들이 만드는 그런 새로운 실험들이 나올 수 있을 거라고 저는 생각을 합니다.
Yeah, so I think the advantage of technology has brought two major changes to our experience with art. So the first is called the expansion of space. So the realm of experience that can be experienced through virtualization technology is really expanding from real world to augmented reality to the virtual reality, and it's affecting various industries. Just we mentioned the game industry and the entertainment industry, but the fact that the expression of space itself, whether virtual or real, has been transformed into a more diverse experience that is in the wider contact, as a wider contact point with art, it really raises the possibility of new art experiences and experiments to emerge. And the second is this extension of time or expansion of time as a concept. So, with the help of technologies like artificial intelligence, metaverse and interactive technologies, there is a huge demand to sort of create a continuum of experiences that will continue to expand and sustain the experience of seeing, collecting, viewing, and making, really, and even contemplating on art, as an audience, right? So through this, I think we expect and anticipate the experimentation in various ways in which audience and users and artists participate in art making and spectatorship. I think the core nature of the technology is that it's always changing, and then I think the changes that are brought spatially and temporally are going to be in the same context and the same pace, as we say. Yeah.
I love the notion of the expansion of time and space. It's also, I think it's not just an art experience. It's not just something to. It's not something just for fun. It's actually very philosophical. And how do we, through these new technologies, that we can experiment with that and push our boundaries, basically. So I think we have two more videos, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we can have a look.
Yeah, sure. I think the next one is actually a pretty well-known exhibition space called the Art Museum here in Korea. We operate one in Gangneung, which is themed the Valley, and this is the video of the works that we are showcasing at the location. We actually have one in Jeju and in Yeosu, and another one, the final Korean branch, is coming in Busan next year as well. So, yeah. Again, the lagging and the glitch. It's not. I think to give you a brief idea in the background behind this space is we actually produce all the artwork and the space itself, and each space is uniquely catered to each artwork. So there are curved room with the curved walls. There's room full of mirrors. there's room that is shaped like a circle. There's also a mirror structures inside the room where it reflects the different parts of the artwork, and it's also incorporated with scents and sounds. So when you go into each spaces, you actually can smell the flowers. For example, the one in Gangneung has I think camellia, maybe a camellia. So there's a work called the flower, and then you can also smell the scent of the camellia while you're watching this amazingly expanded cornucopia of camellias with sounds that we sort of imagined as if you were in this like massive virtual garden. So yeah.
That sounds amazing. It's like I think it's fulfilling like humans' fantasy of when you step into just a room and then you're immediately transported to a different dimension. That has always been our fantasy, and I mean, just look at the animation that we grew up with, all these stories that we hear growing up. So this is almost like on its way to make this fantasy to become reality. Are we gonna? We have one more video to see, right?
Yeah, sure. The next one is actually a video of our NFT artwork. So we collaborated with an artist called Hekatao, who is a well-known OG NFT artist, and with one of our works called The Forest, we created this work that is both an NFT but also an interactive exhibition. So this work is not only just living on the blockchain technology, but also allowing the audience to interact on an offline space. It's actually in the space that we've just shown you, the Art Museum Valley. And the interaction has been it's been really, I would say it's a quite popular success. We've been able to count the interaction live, and as of this morning, there has been 45,000 interactions accumulated within the span of 3 months of exhibition, really. So, yeah, that's what you've just seen.
What do you mean by interaction?
As in, you can go up, you can go into the space, and then the deer would come out and notice you. And when you go closer to the wall and touch the wall, then the deer would, tilt its head and make it look like you're sort of like caressing his back or neck or something. And it's a really unique experience. I think it's really popular among children because, a lot of our works actually includes animals and stuff, but they're not, most of them are not really interactive. But, we have this urge to like sort of interact with them. And then this is really the work that kind of enabled that desire with the audience in the form of, with the help of technology and blockchain, really.
I think it's not just for children, for adults as well. But then when you mentioned, so this is, there's also an NFT element in there. Is this like one of the latest example of Arte Meta? Can you tell us more about Arte Meta and how the direction of where Arte Meta is heading?
네, 디스트릭트가 진행하고 있는 아르테 메타라는 프로젝트는 사실 앞서 말씀드렸던 시간의 확장, 공간의 확장이라는 어떤 디지털 미디어가 가지고 오는 예술계의 예술시장에서의 변화, 이걸 토대로 해서 우리가 어떤 새로운 예술 경험을 만들어낼까에 대한 고민에서부터 출발을 했습니다. 아르테 메타는 가상과 현실을 넘나드는 몰입형 NFT 예술 경험을 만들자라는 걸 목표로 시작이 된 프로젝트고요. 실제로 아르테메타에서 아까 보셨던 이런 작품 또는 새롭게 만들어지는 작품들은 현실 세계의 전시 공간뿐만 아니라 증강된 현실, 가상의 세계, 모바일, 그리고 나의 일상 공간인 집에서까지도 이 작품들을 관람하고 즐길 수가 있고, 또 더욱 중요한 거는 즐기는 방법이 각각의 공간의 특성에 맞게 다르게 제공이 될 거라는 점입니다. 동일한 작품을 다른 모습으로 각각의 공간에서 볼 수 있다라는 점. 그리고 두 번째는 어떤 시간의 확장 측면에서 말씀드렸던 어떤 작가와 사용자의 참여를 통해서 끊임없이 진화하는 작품의 형태, 이런 것들이 어떤 사용자가 작품에 영향을 미쳐서 작품이 변화하는 거, 그걸 넘어서서 사용자 스스로가 작가가 되는 그런 경지에까지 저는 만들어주는 하나의 어떤 계기를 작품 속에서 풀어낼 수 있다고 생각을 하거든요. 그러한 점들을 목표로 두고 진행하고 있고, 아르테 메타에서 만들어지는 모든 작품들은 이러한 컨셉을 가지고 하나씩 올해 초부터 계속해서 공개를 해나가고 있습니다.
So Artemeta is our crypto art project that really started from what we've just mentioned about the expansion of time and space. So when it comes to expansion of space, we think that the technology, the blockchain-based technology, will allow us to go beyond the boundary of the virtual and the real, so that, you know, we want the audience through this project, we want the audience to expand the experience of an artwork into not just in a physical sense, but also in an augmented reality and a virtual reality, and on the mobile, or even at home. So, and the second element of our project is the expansion of time. So, and the time here means more of an audience, the experience of an audience with the artwork. So, you know, just going beyond the idea of user interactivity or the user influence the artwork, we really want the users to really transform their experience into almost like they're making art with us. We want the users to have a experience not just the singular definition of art making, but also by participating with the transformation of our artwork, we almost have this quest to blur the boundary between the audience and their artist. It's a big quest, but that's what we're trying to do.
That sounds, that's really ambitious, but then it also sounds like you're igniting humans' most basic desire, which is to express and to create. And I love the idea that you mentioned about through these participatory format, then anyone can be a part of it. And this is also really interesting along the lines of breaking down boundaries. It's obviously just for art, I think with the technologies and accessibility, it's breaking down a lot of boundaries. And I think one of the boundaries that we have or we come across in the art world is the segregation of different sectors. Like non-profit, they do non-profit stuff. Commercial, they do commercial stuff, and they, but keep a distance, keep an arm's length, from each other. But it feels like breaking down the boundary is where we're heading. And for example, just to look at the way how you guys work, like district, art street, it's you have the artistic intention of creating something, but at the same time you have the technological know-how to actually do business for other people, to provide services. So how do you see this kind of boundary, like taking down the boundary between a purely artistic direction and also on the commercial side of the business?
사실 그 예술과 상업의 경계라는 것들이 저는 이제는 좀 무의미한 그런 트렌드에 우리가 그 위에 서 있다라고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 예술 경험이라는 것 자체가 기술과 융합을 해서 새로운 형태로 재탄생이 된 것처럼 어떤 상업적인 여러 가지 카테고리와도 융합이 되고 있다라는 걸 이미 우리는 많이 목격을 하고 있거든요. 게임과 예술이 혼돈되는 형태의 그런 컨텐츠들도 나와주고 있고요. 그리고 뭐 예술과 어떤 상업적인 전시가 합쳐져 있는 형태의 사례들도 나와주고 있고, 결국은 우리가 지금 만나게 될 앞으로 미래의 예술 경험들은 이런 상업적인 다양한 카테고리에서의 경험들과 합쳐져서 전혀 다른 새로운 장르를 탄생시킬 수도 있겠다라는 걸 전제로 생각을 하면 무수히 많은 방향으로의 가능성이 있다라고 저는 생각을 합니다.
So this so-called trend that I think the boundary between the art and the commerce is really breaking down as we speak. And talking about that boundary specifically is kind of going out of fashion, really. Maybe at least in the context of our Korean art market, in the contemporary art scene in Korea here. And the art, just as art has fused with technology and created these new type of artworks, we've also seen an emerging field where a different elements of our lives are combined with art. The things that are traditionally considered out of the boundary, such as games or more commercial exhibitions that aren't really in the gallery space or museum space, they're all incorporated with the help of technologies that are available and as A Strict and District are utilizing. So I think that the art experience that we strive for today and are going on now these days are really going to expand in myriad ways. Not just because people want to distinguish the art and the commerce, because the merging is already happening, as we speak.
Yeah, that's that goes back to one of the question that we were discussing while we were before this panel, and how different this is in Asia versus how things are done in the West. What do you think, Amelia, from your observation?
Yeah. Well, I think, as you said, there are this concept of church and state in these very established art markets where some things are okay and some things are not high caliber enough to be kind of considered a place where you would want to show art or a place where you want to kind of... I think that the boundaries exist very consciously, and it's hard to break them down. I think in more emerging or emergent art markets, that boundary doesn't exist because those conversations are more recent and people have kind of been captured by art and become a part of the conversation, and instead of something being super exclusive, it's been the opposite, and it's been an inclusive thing where everybody wants to get involved in it and everybody wants to bring other people into the conversation because it's something that's so inspiring. So I think there is an element of that, the kind of deliberately inaccessible, and again this push to make the space more collaborative and open. And I mean, for us it's interesting because we have 9 locations worldwide. We're dealing with all sorts of different contexts in which we're showing the art by our artists, and Mark Limsher, our CEO and president, is very, very focused on making art more accessible. So we've talked a lot about digital art. Obviously, it's the focus of this panel, and how we're doing, that's one of the goals of our NFT program, but we do it in all sorts of ways. We also have a multidisciplinary live art program called Pace Live, and the idea there is that alongside our exhibitions, we work with kind of celebrated musicians or poets, writers, to put on a complementary program that brings new audiences into the gallery through what might be a more familiar or comfortable lens, but then again, we have the opportunity to educate and engage and get people involved. So slightly going off topic to your question, but I think in essence it's all about accessibility and how we can break down these boundaries. And I think in some places, in some locations, that's easier to do than others. And that in some contexts, people are more receptive to it. I mean, just to finish, in Seoul, in our newly expanded gallery complex, on the ground floor, we now have a dedicated black box space, which is conceived for digital and experiential art, with this idea that that will bring a broader audience to the gallery and be a space where we can show exactly the type of projects we've been talking about.
Excellent. I think we're waiting to see more and more, these walls between different worlds can be dismantled, and I think bringing everyone together, bringing more and more people together, I think that should be the direction that we're all heading to. I think on that note, I think do we have time for a bit of a Q&A, or if anyone from the audience have a question, I think our panelists would be interested, or will be very happy to answer. We have one audience member.
Can I ask the question in Korea?
Yes, yes.
네. Hello, my name is Abel Seol. I'm florist and I own my floral shop in Gangnam. 네, 그리고 저는 사실 플라워 부케는 진짜 로맨틱한 그런 작품이라고 생각하고, 저는 또 플라워도 아트의 한 종류라고 생각을 하거든요. 근데 사실 생각에 내 기념일에 남자친구가 꽃다발을 주면 되게 로맨틱하지만 NFT를 나에게 주면 약간 모호할 것 같다는 기분이 모호할 것 같다는 생각이 조금 들거든요. 그래서 NFT가 로맨틱하지 않다라는 것에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하시는지 그 의견이 조금 궁금합니다.
I'll translate.
Please, yeah, thank you.
Right.
Please.
So she owns a flower shop, and the thing that the reason why we are so drawn to bouquets of flowers are because they're romantic, right? So when there comes an anniversary, and let's suppose that there's a boyfriend who wants to celebrate that occasion, and she's receiving a bouquet of flowers. But if this person were to give an NFT on that day, then it's not going to be as romantic as the flowers, right? So yeah, and then I think the question is really, what do you think about the NFT as a non-romantic object to?
Are you suggesting that if someone proposes to you with an NFT diamond ring instead of a real diamond ring?
Yeah, it would probably cost the same amount
So
as a diamond
do
ring.
we feel the same if if this happens? What do you think, Victor? Maybe it would save the guy a lot of money.
네, 너무 어려운 질문인데요. 제가 생각을 좀 방금 해봤는데, 저도 그 NFT가 로맨틱하지 않다라는 그 말씀하신 의견에 동의할 수밖에 없는 것 같고요. 일단은 NFT는 어떤 하나의 오브제와 동일시되는 그런 개념으로 볼 수는 없기 때문에 플라워를 대체하는 그런 개념도 아니고, 그 로맨틱하다라는 기준 자체로 플라워와 비교되는 게 적절치는 않다라고 생각을 합니다. NFT 자체가 사실은 로맨틱하지 않다라는 지적에는 어떤 저는 생각이 좀 담겨져 있냐라고 생각을 어떤 생각이 담겨져 있다라고 보냐면, NFT 자체가 사실 작년에 우리 한 해 NFT 2021년을 NFT 해라고 할 정도로 엄청나게 NFT의 호황기였잖아요. 그런데 그 호황기에 유명한 또는 유명하지 않던 NFT들을 우리가 하나씩 뜯어보게 되면 그 NFT가 정말 사용 사용가치 받고 있다는 걸 공통점 찾아낼 수 있거든요. 그 사용가치라는 것들이 물어보셨던 로맨틱하고 저는 비슷한 개념이라고 봅니다. 그래서 작년에 NFT가 호황이었음에도 불구하고 적절한 사용가치를 제시해주는 NFT가 없었다라는 사실이 어떤 NFT의 호황을 버블이라고 얘기하는 하나의 근거가 되기도 하고요. 또 올해부터 나와주게 될 NFT는 이제 더 이상 그런 사용가치를 갖고 있지 않고 멋있기만 한 NFT를 가지고는 성공할 수 없을 거다라는 걸 반증하기도 하거든요. 이게 크립토 쪽의 씬 자체가 크게 한번 무너졌었잖아요. 저는 그런 여러 가지 세계 경기 침체라든가 이런 원인들도 있었다고 보지만 그런 사용 가치가 없는 NFT의 버블 자체가 붕괴된 거라고 생각을 하거든요. 그래서 이 로맨틱이라는 것도 그런 사용 가치의 한 카테고리 중에 하나라고 저는 생각을 하고 그런 것들을 만들어야 되는 게 숙제인 거고요. 사실 아르테 메타, 저희가 하는 아르테 메타는 로맨틱을 사용 가치로 생각해 본 적은 없습니다. 네.
Please, please.
Right. So that's a lot of information. So I think I will just start by talking about the collapse of cryptocurrency market recently. And then we'll go into why it's not romantic and why it's not considered as an unromantic,
Okay, okay.
a romantic object. So, there has been a worrisome voices saying that the collapse of current cryptocurrency market is really the collapse of a potential for the potential of blockchains and NFTs, but it's actually not true because I think the collapse really happened because of the overall economic downturn, and that the cryptocurrency system is really way too focused and too advanced in thinking about the decentralized finance, and but with the NFTs using art, it's a little different because I think the downturn in the general market is really about an opportunity to rethink the utility and how useful it is for us, and with this sort of a bubble that popped already, we are now going into the moment where we really need to think about what this NFT art means to us in our real life, the utility, and how it's going to benefit the users. And then the artworks, NFT artworks that think about these will be leading the market, whereas the ones who fail to do so will have to face with indifference. And I think as Artemeta, we really didn't really think about the idea of NFT as being romantic as a utility, but it's definitely an interesting point because some people might want to buy this and then give this to someone as a romantic gesture, and and so going off on that, I think that the remark that Victor has is really about the fact that we as NFT artists and digital artists and the ones who are key players in the audience really start to think, really need to think about the utility and what really is, what really means to us these days. And
Right.
Amelia, do you have any?
Yeah, do you have anything to add, Amelia?
I would just say I think it's it can be a romantic gesture regardless of what the gift is,
Well, I think on that note, I think I would like to conclude our discussion today, and I think it's a great point towards at the end. And now is, with all these things happening, the crash, etc. Now is a good time to reflect on what this medium is all about and how the future we want it to be. So thank you very much, panelists. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Amelia. And thank you so much, Jay, for being here to help us with the translation. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. Hope to see you again. Bye.
Thank you.